They're not objective values, because to be a value is a function of a brain, of a mind, right? But to be objective means to exist independently of a mind. So how can you have something in the mind that exists independently of a mind? That's an oxymoron. You cannot have an objective value. You can have values that you can objectively justify by looking at your actions. And all of us do this. Christians, Jews, Muslims, humanists, atheists, agnostics. We all do this. We are all basically humanists. We are all basically situational ethicists in our daily lives. And so is the Bible. If you look at some of those decisions in the Bible, they were situationally justified. Rahab was praiseworthy for the lie that she told. But you have more than one option for your actions. How much harm does this one cause? How much harm does this one cause? And if you have time, you try to weigh those actions and say, if I'm going to be a moral person, I'm going to pick the path that results in the least amount of harm. That's what morality is. It's not some big objective thing. And we flatter ourselves to think that we are somehow special in the cosmos. It's much more meaningful to accept who we really are. We are not egotistical. We should humble ourselves and realize we are part of nature. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that wonderful that we can function in this way? We are social animals. And by the way, Peter Singer is arguing not against human rights, he's arguing for animal rights. If there's no difference between animals and human beings, then let's treat other animals as if they were special too. You're misconstruing what he was saying. And you really stuck your foot in it this time, I'm sorry, by saying that Hitler was an atheistic communist. Did you actually say that? You did say that. He's on the record. Hitler was not a communist. Hitler was a Nazi, a National Socialist. Hitler believed in a God. He was not atheistic. He talked about the Creator all the time. He was a creationist. He credited Jesus as the inspiration for him exterminating the Jews. They wore God mit uns, God is with us, on their belt buckles. Those Nazis were Lutherans and Catholics. Hitler was a member of the Catholic Church, never excommunicated. He credited Jesus. He was a really lousy Christian, I have to admit. He was a really weird Christian, but he was not an atheist. So correct yourself, Lyle. Hitler was not an atheist, and he was not a communist. Do a little bit of history there. That's true. And I also want to compliment you on correctly pointing out that, of course, truth is not determined by majority rule. Truth is not determined by vote. If it were, we should take the vote away from women, because most of the planet doesn't think women should have rights. Well, in fact, none of our founders of our country thought women should vote. If we want to go back to the tradition, women should not vote, women should stay home, women should not go to college, women don't even own their own property. This all comes out of the Bible, by the way. But we know that there are principles of truth that transcend majority rule. So I'm glad you pointed that out. I'm glad you pointed out that the truth can be held by one person, even if the majority of the world disagrees with them. There are other reasons besides reason and truth that people come to their faith. The most obvious one is geography. Geography is the greatest single predictor of what religion a person will have. If you were born in Baghdad, you can predict pretty much what religion that person will have. If you're born in Tennessee, you can pretty much predict what kind of a person you're going to be with your religion generally. And it's the highest predictor. So the arguments that you just gave are not arguments for a God. There's no way anybody can know there's a God because there's a question mark in their brain about design. How do you make the leap between that question mark? Then should I just plug in my favorite God? You're arguing for the God of the Bible. And by the way, those scriptures I quoted were not taken out of context. They were carefully studied. I hear this all the time. If you would study it correctly, I know the Bible. I've translated from original languages. I have some Greek knowledge. I know what it says. I know the Bible contradicts itself. It was written by ignorant human beings who said a few true things, but by and large, the Bible is not a reliable source of truth. It exaggerates. It has historical mistakes and anachronisms in it. It has contradictory advice. It has some really bad advice. It has a deity whose vanity is so fragile that he gets angry and has to kill off entire people. In Psalm 137:9, he told us that we should be happy to take the innocent babies and dash them against the stones. Even if that God did exist, I might necessarily want to worship such a monster. I might ask him to confess his sins to me. What a guy. What if I were to treat my kids like that? I created you and I boss you and now you must bow down to me and you must be like slaves and you can't think for yourselves. if that kind of a God does exist, then he has earned my extreme disrespect. And if he wants to prove what a big macho man he is by sending someone like me to hell, then let him do it. Fine, I go to hell gladly, proudly, knowing that I have resisted somebody like a dictator like that who would create a hell in the first place. Think about it. Any system of thought that's based to any extent upon a threat of violence, which is what hell is. It's a threat of eternal torture. Any system of thought that has that thought in it, that scares the mind of children who go to bed at night wondering if they're going to go to hell, it is a morally bankrupt system. You should not be proud to hold that Bible under your arm. It is morally bankrupt, and you're better than that. There's a better way. The Bible served its time. It is irrelevant. It is anachronistic. It is immoral, and humanistic morality based upon, to some degree, not completely, but to some degree, on the natural instincts that we evolved through natural selection. Even Thomas Jefferson said he thought compassion was a natural instinct. Scientists are now concluding, especially in the last 5-10 years, there's all sorts of scientific explanation for the origin of reciprocal altruism. We can see it in other species. We can see it in ourselves. And most of us fall along that bell curve somewhere. Some of us are saints and some of us are sinners, if I can borrow some words. Most of us fall somewhere in the middle as human beings. We know what it means to be moral without consulting some 10 commandments that came from some mountain on high, only three of which are relevant to modern American law. The other 7 are totally irrelevant. The first 4 have nothing to do with ethics. It is a bad system of law, and we can think for ourselves and rise above. We can know. Not only can we know by looking at the Bible that the God of the Bible does not exist, we can know that the atheistic way is actually a superior intellectual and moral way of thinking.
Mr. Budd, you have 10 minutes to refute the arguments of Mr. Barker.
Okay. Dan just said that there are naturalistic explanation for the altruism that's in humans. One of the books that he often refers to is the book by Matt Ridley. It's called The Origins... Oh, thank you. It's called The Origins of Virtue. He used this in the John Rankin debate. I just wanted to read to you a statement from Matt Ridley. After writing this book, he put this in the prologue. He said this, and this man is one of the most respected in the scientific community for writing on this particular topic. He said, "I can't even be confident that many of the ideas I discuss in this book are right." Well, that is the kind of thinking that is going to prove that altruism can be naturalistically explained. It certainly, absolutely, positively cannot. Now, Dan was right. I did mess up there and say a false statement about Hitler there, that he was a Nazi communist. That certainly is not the truth. But Dan said that Hitler was a Christian. Now, let me read to you a statement from Hitler, Table Talks, October 19th, 1941. The reason why the ancient world was so pure, light, and serene was that it knew nothing of the 2 great scourges, the pox and Christianity. He said in Table Talks, December 13th, 1941, quote, "When all is said and done, we have no reason to wish that the Italians and Spaniards should free themselves from the drug of Christianity. Let's be the only people who are immunized against the disease." Well, you can see that he certainly was no Christian. In fact, if you look at what he did and why he did it, you see that his idea that nature is the ultimate standard is the reason that he decided he would breed the ultimate Aryan race. If you look at Charles Darwin's subtitle to The Origin of Species, on the preservation of favored races. And that's exactly what Hitler was following. Now, Dan says, I'm misunderstanding Peter Singer. He's arguing for animal rights, not against human rights. Let me give you a statement by Singer, and this is a quote. He was talking about abortion, and he said this, "Yet in discussing abortion, we say that birth does not mark a morally significant dividing line. I can't see how one could defend the view that a fetus could be replaced before birth, but newborn infants may not."